Hello, and welcome to the Brain Lab Science channel. Tonight, we drift into the strange and quietly fascinating inner workings of the mind. It's comforting to believe that you are fully in control of your thoughts and experiences, but psychology tells a more mysterious story. Much of what you experience is shaped by invisible processes working behind the scenes, far beyond your awareness. These forces guide your attention, shape your expectations, and color your emotions, all orchestrated by a brain we are still learning to understand. That mystery is where the wonder begins. The same mental tools that help you move through daily life can also subtly distort what you notice, reshape what you remember, and influence how you feel. Under stress, your world can narrow and tighten. In moments of safety and comfort, it can gently open and expand. Within groups, your thoughts may drift in directions you never intended. Even when you are alone, the mind can protect you, persuade you, and quietly steer your decisions, all while convincing you that every choice was entirely your own. If you enjoy these slow, thoughtful journeys, you're welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a quiet thought below. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing you need to do. Let your body relax. Let your eyes grow heavy. Allow the day to soften and fade as we explore the wonders of the mind together. Let us begin. Your mood gently shapes what you notice and what you overlook. Mood works like a filter placed over a camera lens. It doesn't only change how you feel, it alters what your mind decides is important. When you're feeling low, your attention often drifts toward what seems lacking, unfair, or threatening, while neutral details quietly disappear. When your mood is lighter, your mind searches for connection, opportunity, and possibility, and sharp edges begin to blur. All of this happens quickly, often before a single conscious thought forms. It can influence how you read a message, how you interpret a stranger's expression, and how you later remember a conversation. Two people can live through the same day and walk away with entirely different stories about what it meant. Psychology doesn't say your feelings are wrong. It shows how feelings guide perception, like a gentle hand resting on the steering wheel. People can feel deep certainty about memories that never actually occurred. Confidence is a feeling, not a measure of truth. A false memory can arrive with the same detail, emotion, and vividness as a real one because the brain builds both using the same tools. With a few convincing cues, a familiar place, or a repeated story, the mind may quietly fill in the gaps. Later, a person may remember voices, colors, or even scents that were never there. This isn't deception, it's imagination doing its job too well, then being filed away as fact. Research shows how easily memories can be shaped by authority, repetition, or social pressure, and how quickly they can feel real from the inside. Certainty often means a story feels complete, not that it truly happened. The mind also dislikes uncertainty. When something doesn't make sense, it creates explanations to soothe the discomfort. A gap in understanding feels like an itch that needs scratching. When the real cause is hidden, the brain invents one that feels satisfying. This is why people can confidently explain choices they barely noticed making or justify habits that formed without intention. In some neurological conditions, this tendency becomes striking, with people offering smooth explanations for actions driven by brain processes they cannot access. The explanations sound reasonable because the mind is built to keep the story moving. That forward-moving story helps us make quick decisions, but it comes with a risk. An invented explanation can solidify into belief, and once it feels true, it can quietly guide future choices. Your attention, meanwhile, is like a narrow spotlight. Your senses absorb far more information than awareness can handle. Attention solves this by selecting a small slice of reality and presenting it as your world. It feels as though you are seeing everything, but so much remains just outside the beam. But you are mostly seeing what the spotlight is aimed at. That is why something unexpected can happen directly in front of you and still go unnoticed, especially when your attention is locked onto a task. For a brief moment, your brain treats whatever falls outside the beam as background noise. Later, when you are asked what happened, your mind often fills in the blanks with confidence because empty spaces feel unsettling. This isn't a flaw or a personal failure. It is the trade-off built into the system. A wide beam would overwhelm you with detail. A narrow beam keeps you efficient. The cost is that the obvious can sometimes disappear, as though it never existed at all. Your beliefs can also shape how you experience pain, even without medication. Pain is not a simple readout of physical damage. It is a protective judgment made by the nervous system, combining signals from the body with expectations formed in the brain. When you believe something will help, the brain can quiet pain pathways using chemical systems that reduce threat and amplify safety. That is why the same injury can feel different depending on context. An athlete may continue playing until the game ends, only to feel the pain fully afterward. A calm, reassuring explanation from a clinician can ease suffering, while a frightening one can make symptoms intensify. This is not pretending pain away. It is biology responding to meaning. The brain is constantly asking how dangerous this is, and belief becomes part of the evidence it uses. In the right conditions, trust, predictability, and confidence can genuinely turn down the volume of pain. Your brain predicts the future and then presents those predictions as perception. What you experience is a negotiation between incoming signals and what your brain already expects. It is always forecasting what it is about to see, hear, or feel, and then comparing that forecast to the data. When the matches close, the world feels smooth and effortless. When it isn't, surprise breaks through. This is why you can understand speech in a noisy room or recognize a familiar face in a blurry image. It also explains visual and auditory illusions, where expectation wins the argument. Your senses provide hints, not certainty. The brain turns those hints into a workable model of reality because hesitation can be costly. Most of the time, this works beautifully. It gives you speed, stability, and meaning. The strange part is that you only experience the final result, never the guessing process that created it. You can feel watched even when no one is there. That sensation is deeply tied to survival. For social creatures, being noticed can mean danger, judgment, or opportunity. The brain treats signs of attention as high priority, constantly scanning for eye direction, posture, and subtle cues. In uncertain environments, this system can become overly sensitive. A sound behind you, a shadow at the edge of vision, or a half-heard voice can trigger alertness before you know why. The feeling is real, even if the cause is not. It is a safety system that favors caution over accuracy. In crowded places, you might suddenly look up and catch someone's gaze because your brain is actively testing the room. The social mind is tuned to detect eyes, and sometimes it detects them where none exist. Humans often justify decisions after they are made, not before. The choice usually comes first, driven by patterns, emotions, and habits processed at high speed. Conscious awareness is then handed the result, which feels like a careful decision. Afterward, the mind builds a story that makes the choice appear reasonable and aligned with who you believe you are. This is why people can passionately defend preferences formed in moments and grow more attached to things they have already chosen. Experiments show that even when people are led to believe they chose something they did not, many will still explain that choice with confidence. The inner storyteller is persuasive. It preserves self-respect and keeps life feeling coherent. The downside is that it can hide the true influences behind a decision, making learning harder. Understanding this does not erase the effect, but it does offer a small light in the dark. Your brain edits reality constantly, and you rarely notice it. Between your eyes and the world is a vast, invisible editing room. Your gaze jumps in quick movements, and your brain stitches those fragments into a smooth, continuous scene. It fills in blind spots, stabilizes motion, and creates the illusion of a steady world even while your eyes are in motion. That is why a room feels solid and unchanged, despite the gaps in your visual input. It also means dramatic changes can go unnoticed when your attention is elsewhere. An object can shift. A sign can change. A person can disappear. And yet your experience remains seamless. The mind values coherence over accuracy. What you perceive is not raw footage. It is a polished best guess designed to help you act without overload. Memory is not playback. It is reconstruction every time. Remembering is less like pressing play and more like rebuilding a scene from scattered pieces. The brain gathers fragments of image, sound, and meaning, then fills the gaps with what usually makes sense. This flexibility is useful. It helps you learn, adapt, and update old stories. But it also carries a risk. Each time a memory is recalled, it becomes briefly malleable before being stored again. A conversation, a photograph, or a single confident suggestion can slip into the reconstruction. Over time, the memory can drift without you noticing. It still feels familiar, but it is quietly becoming something new. You feel emotions in your body before you can name them. Your heart rate changes, your breathing shifts, and your muscles tighten or release. Only afterward does your mind decide what the feeling is called. Emotion begins as physical data. The brain is constantly reading signals from the chest, the gut, the skin, and the face, then interpreting them in context. That is why the same sensations can feel like excitement before a first meeting or dread before a difficult conversation. The body speaks in sensations, not labels. The label arrives when the brain fits the pattern into a story. This is also why you can feel unsettled without knowing why, and why naming an emotion can bring relief. Once the brain has a name, it knows how to respond. Before that, it is just weather passing through you. Smell can unlock memories faster than almost anything else. A single scent can pull you backward through time with astonishing speed. One breath and you are standing in a childhood kitchen or walking through a place you haven't thought about in years. Smell has a direct and powerful route into the brain, closely connected to regions involved in emotion and memory, which is why these moments arrive suddenly, vividly, and without warning. Emotion and memory, and it can trigger whole scenes without needing language. A photo often invites analysis. You look, you interpret, and you search your mind. A smell skips that process. It drops the memory on your lap complete with mood. That is why certain perfumes feel like a person and why the smell of rain on pavement can carry a whole season. It also explains why scent can be comforting and why it can be distressing. The brain stores smells as signatures of moments, and when the signature returns, the moment can return with it. People trust confident speakers even when they are wrong. Confidence sounds like knowledge, and the brain often treats it that way. A voice that moves smoothly, a story that lands cleanly, and a speaker who never hesitates can feel credible before a single claim is checked. In groups, this effect gets stronger. People look to confidence as a shortcut for deciding who to follow, especially when the topic is complex or the stakes feel urgent. The problem is that confidence can be produced by many things besides accuracy. Practice, status, charm, and even sheer boldness can generate the same signals. Meanwhile, A careful thinker may pause, qualify, and reflect, and those habits can be mistaken for weakness. This bias shapes workplaces, politics, and everyday conversations. It is one reason misinformation spreads so easily. The mind wants a guide who sounds sure, and it sometimes chooses certainty over truth. A single bad experience weighs more than many good ones. Your mind treats threat like a headline and safety like background music. One harsh comment can replay for days while a dozen kind ones fade quickly, not because you are ungrateful, but because your brain is built to learn from danger fast. If a hot stove burns you once, remembering it matters. This negative weighting shows up in relationships, work, and self-image. A single awkward moment can become a defining story, while years of competence feel ordinary. Even in happy times, the brain scans for what might go wrong because preventing harm is more urgent than collecting pleasure. The twist is that this bias can distort your sense of reality. You might believe a place is unfriendly because of one sharp encounter, or believe you are failing because one day went badly. Recognizing the bias gives you a chance to rebalance the picture slowly and deliberately. You can learn fears without ever experiencing danger yourself. Fear is contagious in a way that makes evolutionary sense. You do not need to touch a snake to learn to keep your distance. And you do not need to crash to become nervous in a car. Watching someone else flinch, hearing a story told with terror, or growing up around anxious reactions can teach your nervous system what to avoid. The brain treats social information as evidence. If the people around you react as if something is dangerous, your body can begin rehearsing that danger, too. Over time, the fear becomes a habit and the original source can be forgotten. This is one reason phobias can appear without a clear cause and why fears can spread through groups. It is also why calm can spread. When someone you trust moves through a situation safely, your brain collects that as evidence as well. Learning travels both directions. The more options you have, the less satisfied you feel. Choice sounds like freedom, but too many options can turn freedom into pressure. When there are 10 paths, you can pick one and move on. When there are 100, the mind starts imagining all the lives you did not choose. You compare. You second guess. You keep scanning for a better deal. And that scanning makes the present choice feel provisional. Afterward, satisfaction drops because you can easily picture a different outcome that might have been perfect. This is why endless menus can make dinner harder and why online shopping can leave you strangely empty. The brain is not only choosing, it is also managing regret, protecting identity, and trying to avoid blame. More options increase the number of ways you could be wrong. Sometimes fewer choices do not limit you. They release you. They let the decision become a door you walk through instead of a hallway you pace in. The brain treats social rejection like physical pain. Being left out can hurt in a way that feels almost literal, and that is not a metaphor. Social connection has been essential for survival across human history. So the brain treats rejection as a serious threat. When you are excluded, mocked, or ignored, your body can react with a tight chest, a sick stomach, and a surge of stress hormones as if something is attacking you. This can happen even when you know it is not logical. The social brain is not arguing philosophy. It is tracking safety. Rejection can also sharpen memory. You may replay a conversation line by line, searching for the moment it went wrong because the mind wants a fix. In extreme forms, people will change opinions, hide needs, or accept unfair treatment to avoid that pain again. Belonging is not a luxury for the brain. It is shelter. You crave closure so much that you accept shaky answers. Uncertainty is uncomfortable because it keeps the brain on alert. When you do not know what something means, your mind cannot relax its predictions. That lingering tension is why people leap to conclusions during confusing events. A clear story, even a flawed one, can feel like relief. This shows up in everyday life. You misread a pause as disapproval. You assume a missed call means something is wrong. You decide someone dislikes you because the alternative is not knowing. In bigger moments, the same craving drives rumors and conspiracy thinking, where a dramatic explanation can feel more satisfying than a messy reality. Closure turns anxiety into certainty, and certainty feels like control. The trap is that a premature answer can block learning. Once the mind settles, it stops searching. A useful practice is to hold a question open a little longer than your comfort prefers. That extra space is where accuracy often lives. You notice patterns even in pure randomness. Your brain is a pattern engine. It was shaped to detect meaning in clouds, footprints, and subtle shifts in behavior because missing a real pattern could be costly. The side effect is that you can see structure where there is none. You notice streaks in coin flips. You feel a sign in a coincidence. You sense intention in a string of events that simply happen to line up. This tendency can make the world feel magical, and it can also make it misleading. Casinos rely on it. So do superstitions, lucky rituals, and the feeling that you can predict what comes next after a few wins or losses. The mind loves a narrative arc, and randomness refuses to provide one. So the brain supplies it. Pattern seeking is not stupidity. It is a powerful tool used in the wrong environment. The skill is learning when to trust the pattern and when to test it. You remember endings far more than beginnings. When an experience ends, your brain does not store it as a full timeline. Instead, it compresses it into a summary, and the final moments carry disproportionate weight. That is why a film can be enjoyable for 2 hours and still feel ruined by a weak ending, or why a long trip can be remembered as wonderful or disappointing based largely on the last day. The ending acts like a signature. The brain uses that signature to label the entire experience. This shortcut is useful for learning. Outcomes often matter most when making future choices. If the final bite of a meal made you ill, you avoid that food. If the last moment felt safe, you return. But this shortcut can also distort judgment. You may stay in situations that are mostly harmful because they occasionally end well, or dismiss something valuable simply because it concluded awkwardly. Becoming aware of this bias can change how you design experiences and how you evaluate them afterward. Tiny facial movements can reveal emotions people try to hide. Your face is never truly still. In moments of tension, feelings can briefly flicker across the muscles around the eyes, mouth, and brow, lasting only a fraction of a second before the controlled expression returns. These micro-expressions can signal surprise, fear, amusement, or disgust before a person has time to mask them. You have likely sensed this without realizing it. A smile that arrives just a moment too late can feel wrong. A brief tightening of the lips can shift the meaning of an entire sentence. Your brain reads these signals automatically. It has learned to track subtle facial movements because they help predict others' intentions. Even when words sound polished, the face can quietly reveal the emotional weather underneath. You can mishear words clearly and still feel certain you heard them correctly. The brain does not wait for perfect sound. It takes what reaches your ears, combines it with context, and delivers a sentence that feels obvious. That is why you can recognize your name in noise or feel confident about a muffled announcement. Sometimes the brain guesses wrong, but the guess still arrives with certainty because the system is designed to be useful, not cautious. This is how moan greens happen, when song lyrics turn into entirely different phrases that people defend for years. It is also why misunderstandings in conversation can feel personal. You are not hearing raw audio. You are hearing an interpretation shaped by expectation, accent, stress, and what you anticipated next. Confidence is part of the illusion, and the illusion can sound perfectly clear. Your name can cut through noise in a crowded room. Amid overlapping voices, music, and clattering sounds, one signal can suddenly stand out. Your name. Even when you are not consciously listening, your brain is monitoring the background for what matters. A name can mean attention, praise, warning, or judgment, so the brain treats it as urgent. This is known as the cocktail party effect, and it reveals something important. Attention is not only something you choose. It is also something your brain chooses for you. The remarkable part is that the rest of the noise was always entering your ears. It simply was not allowed into awareness. When your name appears, the gate opens, and you realize you were hearing far more than you thought. People also absorb each other's emotions without noticing. Step into a tense room and your body may begin to mirror the mood before anyone speaks. Humans are built for emotional contagion. We unconsciously match facial expressions, posture, tone, and rhythm, and that mirroring feeds back into how we feel. A relaxed presence can calm you. A flat voice can drain energy. Laughter can spread through strangers almost instantly. This emotional copying is not pretend. It is a deeply social tool that helps groups coordinate, trust one another, and stay safe. When everyone around you appears alarmed, ignoring those signals could be costly. So your nervous system treats other people's emotional cues as meaningful evidence. This is also why a single calm person can steady an entire group, gently lowering the emotional temperature without saying a word. Why conflict can escalate fast when anger bounces back and forth. Emotions are not sealed inside individuals. They move between bodies. Your brain spends energy avoiding effort even for simple tasks. Your mind is an energy manager. Thinking, planning, and self-control cost fuel. So, the brain looks for shortcuts. That is why you can delay sending a message that takes 30 seconds or avoid starting a task you already know how to do. It is not laziness in a moral sense. It is a system that learned to conserve resources. Habits are one of its favorite tricks. Once a routine is automatic, it runs with little effort, like a well-worn path. The trouble starts when the brain labels something as work before it even begins. Then you feel resistance, and the resistance feels like a signal to stop. A useful hack is to make the first step tiny because the brain relaxes once motion starts. The strange truth is that effort often feels worst right before it disappears. We overestimate how much others notice us. Imagine walking into a room with a small stain on your shirt. It can feel as if everyone's eyes snap to it, as if the mistake is loud. Most of the time people barely register it. They are busy managing their own worries, their own appearance, their own inner monologue. This is the spotlight effect, and it happens because you live at the center of your own experience. Your brain treats your actions as the main storyline. So it assumes others are watching the same way you are. They are not. They are looking out from their own centers. This bias can make social life feel harsher than it is. It can stop you from speaking up, wearing what you like, or taking small risks. The relief is real once you grasp it. Most people are not judging you. They are being you in their own heads. The first number you hear can shape your final judgment. Numbers are sticky even when you know they should not be. If someone mentions a high price first, the next price can feel reasonable by comparison. If a low number appears, everything after can feel expensive, even if it is fair. This is anchoring. And it works because the brain needs a starting point. Once the anchor is set, your mind adjusts away from it. But the adjustment is usually not enough. The anchor can be absurd and still pull you. People have been nudged by random numbers they saw moments earlier, and their later estimates drifted toward that number anyway. In real life, anchors show up in negotiations, salaries, online reviews, and even how we rate our own performance. The first figure becomes the reference frame. And reference frames are powerful. One of the best defenses is to choose your own anchor before someone else hands you theirs. We trust familiar ideas more than accurate ones. A claim can feel true simply because it feels known. When you hear an idea repeatedly, your brain processes it more smoothly, and that ease can be mistaken for correctness. This is why slogans work. It is why myths survive. It is why a lie can gain traction if it is repeated with confidence and rhythm. Familiarity is not proof, but it feels like it because the brain equates ease with safety. New information can feel suspicious just because it takes effort to absorb. The unsettling part is that this effect can operate even when you are intelligent, careful, and well-informed. It is a basic feature of how the mind saves energy. The antidote is not to distrust everything familiar. It is to notice the feeling of ease, then ask for a second signal. Evidence, sources, and consequences. Familiarity should be an invitation to check, not a reason to stop. People change opinions to fit the group they join. Belonging is powerful enough to reshape belief. When you enter a new group, you pick up its language, its humor, its heroes, and its taboos. Often faster than you realize. Agreeing signals safety. Disagreeing risks friction or even exile. So, the brain starts looking for reasons the group is right. Over time, what began as social alignment can become genuine conviction because the mind prefers consistency. If your friends all share an opinion, your brain treats that as evidence that the opinion is normal, smart, and moral. This can happen in workplaces, fandoms, families, and politics. It is not always bad. Groups can pull people toward kindness, courage, and growth. The danger is that groups can also pull people toward extremes because agreement becomes a badge of loyalty. A helpful habit is to keep one foot outside any identity and ask, would I believe this alone? Social media rewards outrage because brains love strong emotion. Outrage is a high-energy signal. It grabs attention. It simplifies the world into heroes and villains. And it triggers the urge to respond. Platforms notice what keeps people watching, and intense emotion keeps people watching. So, the system quietly amplifies posts that provoke anger, fear, and disgust because those feelings drive clicks, comments, and shares. Your brain was built to treat threat as urgent. So, it leans in even when the threat is only a headline on a screen. Over time, the feed can train you, teaching you which emotions earn social rewards. The cost is that outrage narrows thinking. It makes nuance feel like weakness. It makes enemies feel obvious. You start to confuse emotional intensity with importance. A useful approach is to treat your attention like a budget. Ask what your feed is trying to sell you and choose what kind of mind you want to live in. Your brain fills in blind spots with invented detail. Right now there is a hole in your vision and you live your whole life without seeing it. Each eye has a blind spot where the optic nerve exits the retina, so there are no photoreceptors there at all. If the world were delivered to you raw, you would notice a missing patch every moment. Instead, your brain paints over the gap using surrounding color, texture, and lines. It borrows from what is nearby and it makes a seamless guess. That repair job is so convincing that you cannot feel it happening. It is not only a visual trick. It is a clue about perception itself. Your experience is partly data and partly construction. When the brain cannot access information, it does not leave a blank. It supplies a story that matches the scene because blanks would be dangerous in a fast-moving world. Eyewitness testimony can be deeply confident yet deeply wrong. A witness can sound calm, detailed, and absolutely certain and still be mistaken about what they saw. In stressful moments, attention narrows, and memory later rebuilds the scene from fragments. Small details can shift while the overall story still feels solid. Lighting, distance, and the speed of an event can warp what gets encoded. Later, questions can shape recall. A phrase like the broken headlight can quietly plant a detail that the witness then begins to remember as real. Lineups add another pressure. People often choose the face that feels most familiar, especially when they believe they must pick someone. The frightening part is that confidence can increase with repetition. Each retelling rehearses the story, not the truth. That is why the legal system treats eyewitness evidence carefully and why good procedures matter. The human mind is persuasive even to itself. Your posture can influence how powerful you feel. Change the shape of your body and your mind often follows. When you stand tall, lift your gaze and open your chest, you send a stream of signals back to the brain about readiness and status. When you fold inward, the brain receives a different message. It reads protection, caution, and reduced space. This does not mean posture magically turns you into a new person. It means body and mind are in constant conversation. Think about how you sit during a difficult call. The shoulders rise, the jaw tightens, and the voice can shrink. Now imagine resetting your stance before you speak. Feet grounded, spine long, breath low. The words often come out differently. People notice it too. Posture changes how you sound, how you look, and how you interpret your own performance. It is a simple lever that can shift the whole experience of a moment. Your expectations can improve performance even without extra practice. Sometimes the difference between stumbling and flowing is what you expect will happen next. When you believe you will do well, the brain allocates resources differently. Attention steadies, distractions fade, and your body is more likely to interpret arousal as readiness instead of danger. Coaches use this when they frame nerves as energy. Teachers use it when they communicate belief in a student's ability. Even your own self-talk can alter what comes out of your mouth in a high-pressure moment. Expectation is also social. If someone treats you as capable, you may take more risks, persist longer, and recover faster from mistakes. This effect is not mystical. It is the brain responding to a forecast. The mind prepares for the future it anticipates. If the forecast is success, your system can become more coordinated. If the forecast is failure, it can become cautious and fragmented. We misjudge how long emotions will last. A breakup can feel like it will echo forever. A win can feel like it will keep you floating for months. Then time passes and the emotional weather changes sooner than you predicted. This is a common forecasting error. When you imagine the future, you focus on the event itself. And you forget the countless ordinary moments that will arrive around it. You also forget how adaptable you are. The brain recalibrates. It learns the new normal. That ability is a gift, but it makes prediction hard. People overestimate how long anger will stay hot, how long embarrassment will keep burning, and how long joy will remain sharp. This matters for decisions. You might avoid a healthy risk because you overestimate future regret. You might chase a purchase because you overestimate future happiness. A useful question is simple. How did I feel after the last time something like this happened? Memory is imperfect, but it is often a better guide than imagination. Stress can sharpen memory or it can erase it completely. In a crisis, time can feel slow and certain details can become painfully vivid. A single sound, a color, a sentence. Stress hormones can tag moments as important and the brain prioritizes storing them. That is one side of the story. The other side is blankness. Under extreme stress, attention can tunnel so tightly that large parts of an event never get encoded. Later, you may remember a flash, but not the sequence. You may recall fear, but not faces. Stress can also distort order. The mind might stitch together fragments into something that feels continuous even when it is not. This split outcome is why two people can share the same emergency and remember it very differently. The memory system is not designed for courtroom precision. It is designed for survival learning. Sometimes that means recording a warning label in bright ink. Sometimes it means dropping everything else on the floor so you can act. People confess to things they did not do. It seems impossible until you picture the situation. Hours of questioning, sleep deprivation, the promise that confession will make it stop. The fear that resistance will make it worse. Under those conditions, the mind starts searching for escape, not truth. Some people confess to end the ordeal. Others begin to doubt their own memory, especially when investigators present false evidence or insist they know what happened. Over time, a person can start building a narrative that explains why they must be guilty. That narrative can feel real because the brain prefers a coherent story over unresolved chaos. Youth, anxiety, and suggestibility can increase the risk. So can authority pressure. This is why modern justice systems emphasize recording interviews, using better safeguards, and avoiding coercive tactics. A confession feels like the ultimate proof, but psychology shows it can be manufactured. The human mind can be pushed into agreement, even against itself. The mind protects self-esteem by rewriting personal history. Most people carry an inner autobiography and it is less like a vault and more like a living document. When your self-image changes, the past often gets edited to match. You remember your old choices as more sensible than they were. You reinterpret mistakes as lessons you always understood. You soften memories that clash with the person you want to be. This is not always dishonest. It can be stabilizing. A coherent self-story helps you function. It helps you trust your own intentions. But it also means you can become blind to patterns you need to change because the mind retroactively paints them as reasonable. You might say you always knew a relationship would fail when you did not. You might recall being fearless when you were terrified. The benefit is continuity. The cost is accuracy. A helpful practice is to treat your self-story as a draft. It can guide you, but it should still be questioned. You can feel a phantom phone vibration that never happened. You reach for your pocket and there is nothing there. No buzz, no notification. Yet the sensation felt unmistakable. This experience is common and it reveals how the brain handles expectation. Your body learns patterns. The phone often vibrates against your skin. You often check it during certain emotions like boredom or anticipation. Over time, the brain becomes primed to detect that signal and it starts interpreting ambiguous sensations as a vibration. A muscle twitch, fabric shifting, a pulse in the leg. The mind would rather miss nothing than miss a message. So, it makes a fast call. Technology did not create this tendency. It gave the tendency a new target. The deeper point is that perception is a hypothesis. Your brain is constantly guessing what a sensation means, then delivering the meaning as if it were the sensation itself. Once you notice this, the phantom buzz becomes less spooky and more like a peek behind the curtain. You can become emotionally attached to strangers you never meet. A voice in your headphones can start to feel like a companion. A creator you watch each night can feel familiar, even intimate. This is a parasocial bond, and it is powered by the same social machinery you use with real people. Your brain recognizes faces, tracks voices, and builds models of personalities. Repetition strengthens the model. You learn their habits, their humor, their tells. You begin to predict what they will say. The bond can feel comforting, and it can even reduce loneliness because your nervous system responds to perceived connection. The difference is that the relationship is one-sided. The stranger does not know you exist, so the usual feedback loops of real friendship are missing. That can create a sense of closeness without the protections of mutual care. It can also make criticism feel personal, as if someone attacked your friend. Understanding this bond helps you enjoy it wisely. The feeling is real even if the relationship is not reciprocal. Romantic love activates the brain like addiction does. Early love can feel less like a choice and more like a gravitational field. Your attention narrows, your thoughts loop, and ordinary things become charged with meaning. The brain's reward circuits light up around the person. And that reward does not arrive calmly. It arrives with craving, anticipation, and relief. Separation can feel like withdrawal, and small signals like a message, a glance. A shared song can hit like a dose. This is part of why love can override good judgment. The brain is treating the bond as a high-value goal, and it will push you toward it with urgency. It can also explain why rejection hurts so sharply and why people chase closure even when it costs dignity. Love is not only poetry. It is motivation chemistry aimed at another human being, and it can be as intoxicating as it is beautiful. Kindness boosts mood more reliably than pleasers does. Pleasure often spikes then fades. Kindness tends to linger. When you help someone, your brain gets more than a quick reward. It gets meaning, connection, and a sense that you matter in the world. That combination can steady mood in a way that a sweet smack or a new purchase rarely does. Think about the aftertaste of generosity. Holding a door, checking on a friend, giving honest praise. The moment is small, but it reshapes the story you tell yourself about who you are. It also changes how you view other people. You start scanning for opportunities to contribute, not just opportunities to consume. That shift can pull attention away from rumination and toward purpose. Even when life is stressful, a kind act can create a pocket of control. You cannot fix everything, but you can improve one moment for one person, and your nervous system notices. People value what they create more than what they buy. Build something with your own hands, and it starts to feel like it has a soul. A crooked bookshelf, a messy drawing, a meal that took effort. Even when it is not objectively better, it can feel more precious because it carries your labor inside it. Psychologists call this the IKEA effect. Effort becomes a kind of glue. It tells the brain this mattered enough to work for. That meaning inflates value. It can also change identity. When you create, you become the kind of person who makes things, and the object becomes proof. This is why people defend their home projects and why handmade gifts can feel powerful. Creation turns time into a physical symbol. It is not just an object. It is a story of persistence, problem solving, and choice. Buying skips that story. So the attachment is often thinner. You crave fairness so strongly that you will punish cheaters at a cost. Fairness is not a polite preference. It can feel like a law of nature. When someone breaks it, many people will spend their own time, money, or status to make the rule visible again. In experiments, people reject unfair deals, even when it means walking away with nothing, because accepting the deal feels like endorsing the violation. That reaction is emotional, fast, and bodily. Anger rises and the mind starts calculating consequences. This instinct likely helped groups survive. If cheating spreads, cooperation collapses. Punishment signals this behavior is dangerous here. A fascinating twist is that it is not always about personal gain. People will punish cheaters who harmed someone else, even strangers, because the brain treats social rules as shared infrastructure. We do not only live among people. We live inside systems. When fairness breaks, it threatens the system, so the urge to repair it can be fierce. We prefer simple stories, even when reality is complicated. Your mind loves a teen plot, a clear villain, a single cause, a neat lesson at the end. Complexity feels slippery and it demands effort. So the brain tries to compress it into something manageable. That compression is useful in daily life. It helps you decide quickly. It helps you communicate. It helps you teach children why the stove is dangerous. But in messy adult reality, simple stories can become traps. They erase multiple causes, mixed motives, and slow systems that take years to reveal themselves. You start to believe one factor explains everything and you stop looking. This is why people cling to slogans in crisis. It is why gossip spreads faster than nuance. A simple story travels easily through a social group and it feels satisfying to the listener. The challenge is learning when simplicity is a tool and when it is a blindfold. Good thinking often begins when you can tolerate a story that stays unfinished. Your brain treats losses as more urgent than gains. Lose 20 and you might celebrate. Lose 20 pounds of money and your body can tighten as if danger arrived. Loss carries a special alarm signal. It grabs attention, narrows focus, and pushes you toward action. Because in nature, losing resources could threaten survival. The result is a bias. People work harder to avoid losing something than to gain the same thing. They hold on to bad investments because selling would make the loss feel real. They stay in relationships that are shrinking because ending it confirms what was lost. Even time feels this way. A wasted hour can sting more than the pleasure of a free hour. This urgency shapes marketing, fear-based headlines, and the way we negotiate. It can also shape self-talk. A single mistake can loom larger than 100 quiet successes. Learning this bias does not erase it, but it gets you a chance to slow down and ask, is this loss truly urgent, or does it just feel that way? People can feel guilt for thoughts, but not for actions. Many people will torture themselves over an intrusive thought while shrugging off a harmful behavior is not that bad. That mismatch is one of the strangest quirks of moral psychology. Thoughts feel intimate as if they reveal the true self. So a dark or dull idea can trigger shame even when the person would never act on it. Meanwhile, actions can be softened with excuses, distraction, and selective memory. The mind treats inner life as identity, and identity feels sacred. This is why some people confess imagined sins or seek reassurance that having a thought means something terrible. It is also why moral growth can stall. If you punish yourself for thoughts you did not choose, you waste energy. If you excuse actions you did choose, you avoid responsibility. A healthier frame is to treat thoughts as weather. They pass through. Actions are what shape the world. Ethics lives most clearly in what you do, not in what briefly appears in your mind. Music can trigger chills through the brain's reward system. A song swells, a note lands, and suddenly your skin prickles. You might get a shiver down the spine, a rush in the chest, or tears that arrive without warning. These chills are not random. They often appear when the brain predicts what is coming, then gets surprised in a satisfying way. A harmony resolves later than expected. A vocalist bends a note just off the edge of normal. A beat drops at the perfect moment. Your reward system responds with a surge that feels physical. It is as if the brain is saying, yes, this pattern matters. Chills can also be social. Anthems, choirs, and live crowds amplify them because belonging and shared rhythm deepen emotion. Music is structured sound, but the brain experiences it as meaning. It can make you feel brave, nostalgic, or calm in seconds. Few things can reach the nervous system so directly without a single word. You feel more confident after agreeing with yourself out loud. Say a belief out loud and it can start to feel more solid even if nothing changed in the outside world. Speaking forces your mind to turn a vague feeling into a clear statement. Once it is spoken, it sounds like evidence. Your ears hear it, your body feels the commitment, and the brain registers consistency. That is one reason affirmations can help some people and also why people double down during arguments. Repeating your position can make it feel truer simply because it is now familiar in your own voice. This effect can be useful when you are practicing a skill, setting boundaries, or reminding yourself of a decision you already made. It can also be dangerous when you are rehearsing a lie or hardening an opinion you never examined. The key is to choose what you reinforce. Your inner narrator is powerful. When you give it a microphone, it can build conviction quickly. Gratitude can reshape attention toward what is working. Gratitude is not pretending everything is fine. It is training the brain to notice support, progress, and stability alongside problems. Attention is limited. So whatever you repeatedly scan for becomes your experienced world. If you scan "know me" for threats, the day becomes a minefield. If you practice noticing what is holding you up, the day gains texture. A working pair of lungs, a friend who replied, a meal that tasted good, a moment of focus when you expected none. Over time, this practice can change what stands out automatically. It does not erase grief or stress, but it reduces the sense that life is only loss. Gratitude can also make people more generous and resilient because it reminds the brain it is not alone. The mind is always building a summary of reality. Gratitude changes the data going into that summary. It is a small habit that can shift the emotional climate of a life. People mistake familiarity for truth even after repeated lies. When a claim keeps showing up, it starts to feel like it belongs. Your brain recognizes the shape of it, the phrasing of it, the rhythm of it. That recognition can be mistaken for reliability, even when you already know the source is untrustworthy. Over time, the mind can lose track of where an idea came from, and it keeps the content while misplacing the warning label. This is why a rumor that is debunked can still spread. The correction fades, but the catchy line remains. It is also why repeating a false claim in order to argue against it can backfire because it gives the brain more exposure to the sentence itself. Familiarity is a feeling and feelings arrive faster than reflection. The skill is learning to treat that feeling as a cue to slow down, not a cue to nod along. You can be influenced by a message you forgot hearing. The mind can absorb an idea without storing it as a memory you can retrieve on command. You might pass a headline, hear a phrase in a hallway, or catch a slogan in the background of a video, and later you find yourself leaning a certain way without knowing why. The influence can show up as a preference, a suspicion, or a sudden sense that something just seems right. This happens because some learning is more like tuning than remembering. The brain updates its expectations based on patterns. And those updates do not always come with a story attached. You forget the moment, but you keep the tilt. That is why repetitive exposure can shape taste in music, attitudes toward a topic, or how trustworthy a face feels. It is also why persuasive messages aim for your attention when it is low. The best defense is to ask, where did this idea enter me, especially when the conviction feels oddly effortless. The brain remembers unfinished tasks better than finished ones. Start something, then get interrupted, and the task can keep tapping you on the shoulder. A half-written email, an unresolved argument, a puzzle you did not complete. The mind holds onto these open loops because they signal incomplete goals, and incomplete goals can matter for survival. Finishing a task allows the brain to file it away. Leaving it unfinished keeps it active like an alarm that has not been switched off. This is why cliffhangers work so well, and while you suddenly remember an errand at midnight, it can be useful. The nagging can push you back to completion. It can also be exhausting, especially when the task is impossible to finish right now. A powerful trick is to create a clear next step. Write a single line that states what you will do next, and the brain often relaxes because it senses a path forward instead of a dangling thread. A warm drink can make you judge others as warmer. Hold a hot mug for a moment, and social impressions can shift in subtle ways. Physical warmth is one of the earliest signals of safety in human life. It is linked to being cared for, being held, and being protected from cold. Because of that deep association, the brain can borrow the feeling of temperature and apply it to a person. Someone may seem friendlier, more trustworthy, or more approachable when you are literally warmer. This does not mean warmth forces you to like everyone. It means your mind uses body cues as context when it makes quick social predictions. That connection can work in the other direction too. Coldness in the body can nudge impressions toward distance. The fascinating part is how ordinary it feels. You believe you are judging the person, yet your nervous system is quietly contributing extra information. It is a reminder that your social world is built from more than words and faces. It is built from sensations. Hunger makes you see the world as more threatening. When your body needs fuel, the brain shifts into a more defensive mode. Irritation rises more quickly. Neutral faces can look more unfriendly. Small problems feel sharper. Hunger is not just a stomach signal. It is an internal stressor, and it changes how the mind interprets what is happening around you. The body reads low energy as a vulnerability. If you are vulnerable, the environment becomes more risky. That is why a crowded store can feel hostile when you skipped lunch, and why a harmless comment can sound like an insult. The same effect can amplify impulsive choices because the brain wants the fastest path to relief. This is also why it is hard to have a fair argument when one person is hungry. Their perception of threat is higher. The fix is surprisingly practical. Food, water, and time can lower the alarm volume, and the same world becomes easier to handle. Sleep loss makes emotions louder, and it makes logic quieter. A tired brain has fewer resources for self-control and for careful interpretation. Small annoyances hit harder. Sadness feels heavier. Worry grabs the microphone. At the same time, the systems that help you pause, reframe, and choose a measured response are less available. That combination can make you feel like you are being irrational when what is really happening is a shift in brain balance. Sleep supports the ability to regulate emotion, and it helps the mind separate immediate feelings from long-term goals. Without it, the brain leans on faster, more reactive pathways. This is why people send texts they later regret, and why conflicts escalate late at night. It is also why problems seem more permanent when you are tired. In the morning, with rest, the same issue can look solvable. Sleep does not fix your life. It changes the lens you see it through. And that lens matters. Loneliness changes how your brain reads facial expressions. When you feel alone, the mind becomes more vigilant for signs of rejection because rejection would deepen the danger. That vigilance can change what you perceive in other people's faces. A neutral look can be read as disapproval. A brief pause can feel like dismissal. You start scanning for proof that you do not belong, and the scan itself can bias the result. This can become a feedback loop. Feeling lonely makes social signals seem harsher, and harsh signals make you withdraw, which increases loneliness. The tragedy is that none of this requires anyone to be cruel. The brain is trying to protect you, but the protection can misfire. Understanding the loop matters because it shifts the question from what is wrong with me to what is my mind doing under social stress. A useful step is to seek small, low-pressure contact, a short conversation, a familiar voice, even brief eye contact. Tiny connections can soften the lens. Your brain uses shortcuts because it cannot compute everything. Every moment presents more information than your mind could ever fully analyze. Light, sound, movement, social cues, internal sensations, and memories all compete at once. To survive this, the brain relies on shortcuts. Fast rules that usually work well. You guess what a shape is before you examine it. You judge mood from tone before you pass every word. You choose based on a few cues, not the full spreadsheet. These shortcuts make you quick, and they keep you from freezing in overload. They also create predictable errors.